Hi, I'm Commissioner Mike McKeon, and I'd like to welcome everyone to another episode of the Public Works Pipeline. Along with the Lower Merion Library Show, we are one of just two shows on LMTV in which we all of our own stunt. We have a jam-packed show today with Public Works Director Paul McElhenney, Public Works Assistant Director Andrea Thompson, and Fleet Supervisor Pete Maltari. So really excited to have everybody here today. We're going to jump in and talk to Andrea first. So Andrea, what exactly is your role with the township?
As you stated earlier, I'm the Assistant Director of Public Works. Basically, we work to maintain the township's infrastructure.
And how long have you had that position?
Just over 2 years.
And can you tell us a little bit about your background? Like, I think you're from Lower Merion, right?
Yes, I'm born and raised in Lower Merion. I grew up right in Pelican Wood. I am a licensed civil engineer that worked in the private land development before coming to the township. I did private land development for about 17 years.
Well, it's great. But glad you returned to the township. But what exactly piqued your interest in the job at Lower Merion?
I would say the top factor is because I'm born and raised in Lower Merion. There's a passion factor for me. It's my hometown. It's where I grew up. So when the option for the assistant director came available, I thought it would be a good way to marry my private land development experience and bring it over to the township.
Now, I've learned the hard way when I ask somebody at Public Works what a typical day is. They sort of laugh and say there is no typical day. So can you just describe sort of typically what some things you may do in a week for Public Works?
You're right. Nothing is ever typical in Public Works. Every day is different. This week, particularly, I was involved in CIP project management and review. Also, we're gearing up for planning our upcoming spring and summer workload. And we're currently mentoring a Drexel co-op as well as part of the team. And on top of that, I was doing some internal infrastructure design for us.
Now, the CIP is a long-term plan that we have. We go through with the budget process every year. It's usually a 5-year plan. For some reason, some people call it the Capital Improvement Plan. Others seem to call it the Capital Improvement Program. Either way, it's still the same acronym as the CIP. But what are some of the CIP programs that you've been working on lately?
Lately, it's been a lot of sanitary sewer. As you can imagine, there's a lot of maintenance and upkeep with regard to our infrastructure on that end. We also are replacing the bridge on Manioc Road between Conshohocken State Road and Bryn Mawr Avenue this summer. So that has been a hot topic recently. In addition, we also have our yearly milling and paving township-wide for a portion of the township roads, and that'll be beginning in the next few months.
Oh, that's great. Now, in terms of resident interaction, I have a lot of comments we have from residents if they need something from Public Works. Do you have any suggestions for the best way to communicate with Public Works to get something done?
Honestly, there are multiple ways that are equally effective. They can call the Public Works Department. I would recommend calling the main number so that they then can be sent to the proper division in order to handle the topic at hand. They can also email us. All of our email addresses are linked to the township website and readily available. And they can also use the Lower Merion Township Report It app as well if they have that downloaded from the website on their phone.
And do you do a lot of work with utility companies too? Oh, and I'm sorry, thank you. This is the Public Works mailbag. It looked like it came in a little bit early today. So, but as you can see, we're loaded with questions here. Yeah, that sometimes the mail comes a little bit early in Valley Kingwood. You never
or better early than late.
Yes, indeed. So I was starting to ask you about utility companies. Also, what's the what's the relationship with between Lower Merion and utility companies? How would you describe that?
I would say we work extremely well together. There's a lot of coordination and communication. Lower Merion Township specifically doesn't necessarily have jurisdiction over those entities. So it's more of a construction coordination standpoint and a high level of communication as to where they're going to be in certain parts of the township.
And when we say jurisdiction, what are some areas that those utilities have jurisdiction over within the town?
Well, the township doesn't have any jurisdiction over them, meaning that basically they report to the at the state level, the Public Utility Commission. So that's more PICO and Aqua, the utilities that are not operated by Lower Merion Township. We do have sanitary sewer, we do stormwater piping, but there are other communication and water and gas and electric that isn't under the jurisdiction of Lower Merion and are operated by other entities.
But if I may interrupt for just a second, we do it, as Andrea has indicated, we don't have jurisdiction over them, but as she indicated, we work very well with them. They allow us input, and we try to coordinate interruptions and roadway closures and all that, and they do their best to try to accommodate our needs and our desires. But again, they have to answer to the Public Utility Commission, and a lot of their projects are dependability projects, and they're told that they are mandated that it has to be done, but they do their best to try to coordinate where they're going to be and what's going to be going on. So as Andrea has stated, we have a very good relationship with them, and they do work really hard to try to work with us.
And I think that's something that can cause a little bit of either confusion or frustration with residents is if there's an issue involving a utility in the township, they want to know where to go. So sometimes people will tell me, hey, my power is out. And I'll say, well, we need to tell PECO. I can't go like that and bring the power back. But is there a better process? I mean, is there a point people at the township who you can contact if you have a utility issue, or is it better to go straight to the utility, or does it vary by the utility?
I would say it varies more so on the situation and what the concern is. Depending on it, the township is always ready and willing to communicate on a resident's behalf to the utilities. We have open lines of communication, and we have contact people that we can readily reach out to. But my first and foremost advice would be to call them directly, especially if it's a more urgent situation. That it's best to reach right out to them, but we are always here and ready to use any of our contacts and our communication avenues available in order to discuss and hopefully help resolve a situation.
And when there is a power outage, I know that PECO will try to work to restore power on the denser and more active grids. The idea is to get power back to as many people as quickly as possible. That doesn't make that's a little solace if you're one of these people who lives on a smaller grid and you're just at the end of the line, and that's the way it is. But the idea is to try to help as many people as quickly as possible. Now, in terms of the like trees in the in right of ways and for the utilities, who does the tree trimming within the township?
Well, first it depends on the purpose of the tree trimming and the ownership of the tree. Within Public Works, we have a shade tree division that does do tree maintenance responsibilities for all township trees. But you will also see PECO has contractors that perform it with regard to the safety of their power lines. So you can see a variety of people performing the tree trimming. It just really based on the situation, it's who's involved.
And when you have a storm, what are some challenges that you face just in Public Works and trying to restore power, deal with safety? How do you handle that?
Usually it's, honestly, I say we try our best to get it resolved as quickly as possible. There is a triage level approach to it. Like you had stated before, PECO works by larger grids to smaller grids. We kind of take the same approach with regard to priority of roadways and the situation, if it's a partial blockage can be shifted off quickly, or if it's something more involved. So my biggest input would be to be patient and just know that we're basically attacking the problem the best way we possibly can in a organized priority.
If I could just interject real quick, we also, when a tree comes down, if there's an electric wire involved, our staff's not allowed to touch that tree until PECO has confirmed that wire is de-energized. And many times, we're again following their lead in what circuit has the most people, and we have to wait for their confirmation that we can touch the tree, because the tree will conduct electricity.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you very much, Andrea. I'm going to jump in and do some of these Public Works mailbag questions, and I'm going to ask Paul, but please feel free to interrupt Paul when he's talking, because he interrupts all of us. If you want to say something, but please jump in.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Paul, our first question here has to do with refuse. This comes from Jackie Treehorn from the Belmont Hills Chamber of Commerce. And Jackie writes, what's the largest trash can size I can use? And what can I do with my cans that are too big?
Well, we'll allow those 20-yard dumps. No, I'm kidding. The ordinance was readjusted last year to reflect the current manufacturing of trash cans, because the ordinance had said 45 gallons. Manufacturers make the 48-gallon cans. That is the largest that an individual is allowed to have. All trash that's placed into that can must be bagged. Those cans are made to be lifted by a machine. We do not do that. So our staff has to be able to reach into the can and remove it. We don't want them lifting them. That leads to injury. So 48 gallons is the maximum size can that a resident can have.
All right, and we're going to do one more question here before we go to a break. This is from a Mr. Chester Springs, and Chester writes, how was the 2021 sanitary sewer rate shaping up?
Sanitary sewer rate is, believe it or not, staying the same as it was since 2012. No increase at this time. The Board of Commissioners just Wednesday night reviewed and concluded that there would be no rate increase at this time, which for me is a great savings because my son thinks that 5,000 gallons of water to take a shower is acceptable.
And I think the rate will be $4.51 per 1,000 gallons, and that rate hasn't changed since 2012. And frankly, to raise the rate at a time like this during a pandemic, I think it's political suicide. But with that, we'll take a break here. We finished our first segment, and we'll come back with a discussion with Pete Multari and some other public work issues. I'd like to welcome everyone back to the Public Works Pipeline. We are finishing up the mailbag segment, so I have two more questions here for our director, Paul McElhenney. The next one here comes from Mr. Olvan, and Mr. Olvan writes, Dear Master Chief McElhenney, can I get mulch and mulch chips from Kegel? If so, how much do you Smart Alex charge?
Well, you can indeed get it from the Kegel complex. We keep it at the rear of the complex. If you follow around past where you dispose of your brush, you go up towards the rear gate, and we have mulch available for the public. And we offer it at the low introductory price of $0. But it is the residents' responsibility to load it themselves. We will not load a truck or anything of that nature. It's up to the residents to do so themselves.
That still sounds like a great deal. And our last question here comes from a Mr. Randy Watson from Jackson Heights. And he writes, how can I dispose of hazardous pesticides and herbicides safely?
Unfortunately, you can't do that on a regular basis at the Kegel complex. The county does sponsor events. October 24th, they will be doing a hazardous waste dump day, where you'll come into the Kegel complex and you can dispose of your hazardous waste, pesticides, gasoline, paint thinners, those type of items. If there's a desire to dispose of them sooner than that, you can check the county website for other events that they're hosting throughout the county. At this time, they are all reservation only. You do need to reserve a spot in advance.
Oh, thank you very much, Paul. We're going to move on to Pete Multari next, but before I do that, I do have some very disturbing news to briefly go over. We've had yet another setback for the Public Works Pipeline trading card set. They say that victory has 1,000 fathers and defeat is an orphan, and I will take full responsibility for this latest failure, but there was an error on the Joe Presbyzeski card. He's a refuse supervisor, and it's a very simple name. I don't know how you would spell it incorrectly, but apparently our printer had a Y at the end instead of an I. So we had to destroy all those cards that we've dumped them in the Schuylkill River. Hopefully we'll make a nice cardboard reef. And fortunately, we have corrected the error. So there is a new Joe Pres card that will be out there, and we still hope to get those card sets to the kids by the holidays, but it may take a miracle at this point. So we'll see. But on a cheerier note, Pete Multari has been waiting here patiently. Pete is the supervisor of Fleet. Fleet is one of 7 divisions of public work. It has 9 employees, and again, Pete is a supervisor for it. So, Pete, you're originally from New York.
Yes.
We won't hold that against you, I promise. But can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, like you mentioned, I'm originally from New York. I was actually born in New York City, but grew up in upstate New York in the country. I have over 20 years experience working in fleet operations and management and repairs. I spent 13, 14 years working for New York State. I spent some time working for PennDOT. And I did a lot of private fleet consulting over the years.
And can you just explain to us what the purpose of the fleet division is?
So the purpose of the fleet division is we provide all the vehicles and equipment that's needed for basically all the other divisions to do their job. We maintain them, we repair them, keep all the records.
About how many vehicles do you end up looking after?
So we have over 450 vehicles. From
Now,
snowplows
Mike-
to lawnmowers, to dump trucks, pickup trucks, police patrol vehicles, basically everything you see, we own.
I was going to say, when Pete said for the other divisions, it's actually all the departments, police. He has oversight of the equipment for parks and all that. So those 400 and some pieces of equipment are the entire township.
Right. Yeah, I should mention that the fleet, it's not just public works vehicles or fleet vehicles. Fleet is the fleet for the entire township. Now, of course, I know the difference between electric vehicles and hybrids, but there may be some people out there who are not as learned as me. Could you just explain what the difference between an electric vehicle and a hybrid is?
Sure. So electric vehicle runs strictly on electricity. It has a battery, electric motors. That's the main energy source. Hybrid will have a internal combustion engine that charges a battery. That's the biggest difference. The hybrid's going to give you longer distances and a little bit more reliability.
And to date, about how many electric vehicles have you been working on in our fleet?
So we have no electric vehicles, but we do have 3 hybrid vehicles.
And how's the performance of the hybrids been? Has it been good? Has it been driving you crazy or something in between?
A little bit of everything, actually. One hybrid is more of an inspector's vehicle, so it works out great. 2 of them are police vehicles, and they're not quite up to par. They're not holding up to the standard that they're supposed to at this time.
And are those patrol vehicles for the police?
They are. They are full-time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week patrol vehicles. We've had them for a little over a year, and we're still trying to work out all the bugs.
Yeah, and I can get how that could be important. If a building inspector shows up 5 minutes late for a meeting, they're 5 minutes late. If a police officer is chasing a bank robber and the car stops, the robber gets away. So that could certainly be a bit more important. How are the vehicles budgeted by fleet?
So the way the vehicles are budgeted is, I'm assuming you mean by how we purchase them?
Yeah.
So we have an equipment fund. Township has an equipment fund that we put money in to purchase these vehicles. Look at it this way. All the vehicles are owned by the Public Works Division. What we do then is take these vehicles and rent them out to all these other departments. That rental rate is based on what it costs to replace that vehicle over the course of its life cycle. They get an annual budget. They incorporate that into their budget, and that gets deposited into the equipment fund. So at the end of the life cycle, we already have the money ready to go purchase new.
And just to touch back on this with the other departments, what departments that you work with would have the most vehicles and which ones would have the fewest?
So the most would be the police department. They have well over 45 pieces. The least would probably be the fleet division. We have 2 service trucks so that we can go on road calls or pick up parts or whatever it might be.
And I think with the police too, those vehicles are running, some of them, is it 24 hours a day? Am I correct?
You are correct. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They don't stop. They stop in between shifts for a changeover, and that's it.
And just because of that, I think that makes it really difficult to have any kind of a charging process because they need to be running all the time.
Right. You would need the time to charge your vehicle, and they don't stop. So when do you charge them?
And one thing I heard this recently at township meeting, but just the price for gas. What's the price per gallon for gas that the township pays?
So last year we paid as little as 32 cents a gallon. This year we're right around $1.10 right now. We're tax exempt. So
Mike, understand that it's because we don't pay state tax, all the taxes that the residential consumer does at the pump. So it's not as if we have a special sweetheart deal, or we are part of a consortium that buys it, but we don't pay the tax like everybody else.
And, Pete, I mean, obviously this technology is changing all the time. I just wanted to try to go into the future a little bit. Where do you see the fleet division in the next few years?
Next few years, I see us hopefully maybe downsizing some of our fleet, maybe having one piece of equipment that can do the job of two. I see incorporating some electric vehicles at some point, but as the price comes down and the battery technology advances. I see a lot of other technologies coming into play too. A lot of the management systems, the fuel management systems, how we track vehicles, things of that nature.
And how about new technology in particular? Is there anything new that's that we could see in 5 years or 10 years? Any kind of game-changing stuff?
On my end, yes, there's the tracking systems, the GPS systems are the integration is it's getting really high level, so it's helping me out tracking equipment and records. The electric vehicle field is also something new that we'll see something in 5-10 years.
And this is a question, maybe I shouldn't ask this, but for a typical day for you, what would you do in a typical day or a typical week?
Start by pulling my hair out. I come in, I check in all my guys. I like to know what jobs are in the shop, what needs to be done, if there's any urgency that a certain repair might be needed. I like to be kept in a loop. From there, I go about answering to all the other departments on what they need. There's always 50 to 60 emails when I come in the morning that need to be addressed. Today's topic is we're having a problem with our fuel system, so I'm trying to iron that out.
And during the coronavirus, has that been a lot more difficult for you, or are you being able to work remotely through things?
Actually, it has become difficult. We're busy to begin with, but since the whole virus hit, we probably doubled in repairs. We never stopped. We've been here the whole time. It's become difficult to get parts. Manufacturers just don't have the supply. We can't get tires. You're waiting 2-3 weeks to get tires or batteries sometimes. So it has made it challenging.
The other thing that made it a little challenging is at the height of the virus, Pete had to separate his shifts so that we would have redundancy. If we had to quarantine, we didn't have to quarantine the whole shop. So he had 2 shifts going and had to manage 2 different time sets and so forth.
Yeah, and that's something, I mean, just generally, Andrea, Paul, Pete, I mean, thank you. The last 13, 14 months or so, as this coronavirus has gone on, and we're still working remotely, the work that you've been able to do on the front lines for the township, I think has been fantastic. And we've been really happy, just from a township perspective. There was no real disruption in services. We were able to keep going. We avoided a township tax increase. So I think people worked really hard, and we were just very, very efficient. So I see the light coming at the end of the tunnel here. So hopefully we'll be out and about soon. But wanted to thank everyone for their hard work, and also thank everybody for appearing today. I hope everyone who watched it here, you found it informative, and we'll be back next month with another show. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.